Welcome back to another edition to the Root to Rising podcast. As a reminder, it's a platform that's been created to have people share their stories and experiences for others to learn, listen, and grow. And today I have another guest with me, Michelle, who we're excited to have on the show and hear a little bit about her personal and professional brand. So Michelle, welcome to Root to Rising.
Hi, Christine. It's really nice to be here. So I am an executive leadership coach. I work with high achievers to help them really have a life and career that feels as good as it looks on paper. And I also do a lot of team trainings and facilitation within organizations, both to help teams work more cohesively, to elevate leadership within organizations, and things like that. So that's what I do.
Awesome. Sounds like a much needed profession that we all have these days. So tell us a little bit how you got into executive coaching and what led you to have that decision.
So it was pretty roundabout. I went to college as a theater major. And that was what I wanted to be my entire life from the time I was a very little girl. When I was 3 years old, they had to actually pull me off the stage at my recital because I was the one who stayed on stage blowing multiple kisses at the end after we bowed. Everybody else followed directions and got off, and I just loved the applause.
I love it.
So, I decided from a very young age that I wanted to be on stage. I wanted to be a star. And I went to college. I was a theater major at Northwestern. And after college, I moved to New York. And around the age of 23, I don't even remember anymore. It felt like it was a long time after I graduated. But now as I'm saying that, I'm like, oh, well, that was just a few years. But I had worked professionally a little bit. I had done some regional theater, and largely regional theater. And I was at a callback for a national tour of the show Annie, Get Your Gun. And I kind of had this epiphany mid-cartwheel across the room, which was that I did not want to leave New York City to cartwheel across a stage 8 shows a week. It just didn't what I thought I wanted had shifted. And part of it was no shade to Annie, Get Your Gun for theater lovers. It's a great show, but that wasn't the kind of theater that excited me. And doing that didn't excite me the way I always thought it would. And so I felt like, you know what? I really want to get on the other side of things and create theater that excites me. So that's what I did. I went and I worked for a few different producers, and I ended up with the producers of the show Rent. And I worked with them through a super, super exciting time. I worked with them when we were working with Baz Luhrmann, who's a big film director who did the film Moulin Rouge and Romeo and Juliet. And we put La Boheme, the opera, on stage. And we also brought a show called Avenue Q to Broadway and won the Tony Award for that. And I was working actually in the very early stages with Lin-Manuel Miranda on Hamilton. It was just a super exciting time. But 26-year-old Michelle, being the high achiever I was, it didn't feel like enough. Like I wanted more. So I ended up moving out to Hollywood and I got a job working with a big television network executive. And it was a really, it was fascinating. I was really working my way up the ladder. I found myself constantly questioning, really, is this, even in the theater world when I was working, is this it? Is this all there is? And I found myself doing that in Hollywood as well. The problem was that I had already stopped doing what I had always said I was going to do one time. And even in that moment, I felt a lot of shame. I think a lot of high achieving women can relate to that idea of, well, this is what I said I was going to do. And if I don't achieve it to the fullest extent, then if I stop, I have failed.
Yep.
Right? And so here I was feeling that again, as I was getting promoted and as I was doing the job that I set out to do, I was having all these little pangs of that feeling coming through again. I remember there was this one day I was sitting in the bathroom and there were these 2 big executives sitting out. They were standing outside having a conversation over the sinks, And these were women who had the kind of careers that I thought I wanted to have. And one of them was talking about how annoying her daughter had been that morning. She was 6 years old and she just was complaining so much about how her mom was not going to be around at all during spring break. And, why do you always have to work and you never spend time with me? And I was sitting in that bathroom stall kind of losing my mind because I was pregnant with my first daughter.
Yeah.
And nobody knew yet. It was a secret. I had just gotten my second promotion. And I was sitting there going, this is a problem. Like, in 6 years, I want to hang out with my kid on spring break, And that's kind of a very inconvenient thought to be having when those women are the people that I think I want to become.
Yep.
And there were lots of little moments like that peppered through, but I kept kind of like shaking them out of my head because, again, well, if I don't get to the place I said I was going to get, I'm a failure.
Yep.
And so it went on that way for quite some time. And the truth is, I actually got laid off when I was 8 months pregnant.
Wow.
And it was during the 2008 recession. Never happened now because, nobody would ever dream of doing that.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a whole other story. But, everyone wanted me to sue. I was too afraid that the stress would be too hard on the pregnancy, things like that. So, but the truth of the matter is, I wasn't happy in my job. And that probably was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because when I started interviewing again, because even after I had my daughter and I decided I was going to go back to work, even though I knew I hadn't been that happy, I still felt like it was so hard for me to give up the idea of entertainment.
Yep.
But every time I didn't get the job, I was relieved.
Interesting.
And there was a job that I went in to interview for with a woman at NBC Universal. And I really liked her. She was the first person who I was like, oh my gosh, I really think I want this job. And at the end of our interview, we sat and chatted for a really long time. And she said, I want you to take the weekend and think about this because you're a new mom. And this is an intense job. And I'm looking for somebody who is willing to eat and breathe this job. And I want you to think about if that's what you want. And it was the first time since I had known I wanted to be an actress that I'd considered the question, what do I want? And doing that made me recognize I don't want a job that I can eat and breathe. I don't even know if I want entertainment. And it allowed me, that question gave me permission to kind of get off the ladder that I thought I was climbing and actually start to explore what my options were. What are the different paths I can take? What at this point in my life as a 3-year-old woman do I want that might be different from what I thought I wanted when I was 12 and 18 and 22. And that really changed the trajectory for me. I ended up going back to school and exploring. I signed up to do an introductory coaching course. And when I was there, that was it. I signed up for straight through to certification. And I have not looked back since.
Wow. What an amazing journey. And let's go back a little bit because you said since you were 3 years old, right? You loved being on stage. You were the last one to get off stage. You loved the entertainment. You took, the position. You had the opportunity in New York to, travel and act. What shifted? Do you think something truly shifted in what you wanted? Because you said it was from, you wanted to stay in New York. You didn't want to travel. You didn't want to be on the road. But yet, then you moved across the country to Hollywood, California, right? So the reason that you didn't take that first opportunity was to stay in New York, but your second opportunity, you went to California. So totally follow, things shift. But why did it shift for you in those moments?
Such great questions. And it's multifaceted. So it was true that I didn't want to leave New York to go do that show. And perhaps if it had been a show like Rent or something that really excited me, I would have felt differently. But there was something happening in the lifestyle of being an actress that I don't think I was fully prepared for, as I saw a lot of my friends around me starting to make a lot of money and having stability. Meanwhile, I was waiting tables at night, but So there was that element of like the stability factor. There was also, and this is overarching through my whole career. So there are times where I look back and think, gosh, if I knew then what I know now, would I have stayed in theater? I still might have chosen not to do that, but would I have stayed an actress? Would I have stayed in theater? There's no way for me to know. I also feel at this point, I can always go back if I really wanted to, but there was a lot of inner critic talk. My self-talk was really intense and challenging, and I don't know if I want to use the word confidence, but the person who I had been as such a young woman who was so confident and strong, it shifted over the years. And in your early 20s especially, there was so much challenging self-talk going on around myself as an actress or myself as a dancer, and how long was I going to give myself? And so that was definitely a part of it. It was, if I'd known then about the idea of values and exploring like what was most important to me, I would have been able to look at it from a more holistic viewpoint. But what I love about the question is it goes beyond the really neat little package of the story to all the other things that were going on for me that came into that decision. So there was an element of stability. There was an element of, there was definitely an element of, I don't love a lot of these things that I'm auditioning for. And like, I want to be excited. And as a young starting actress, do I really get to make those choices? And the idea of being part of creating exciting theater did really excite me. So that's the answer around the actor part. The Hollywood part is also an interesting question because I met a boy.
Every
the truth
story
is, I was in a
starts
long
with that, right?
distance relationship for a year with somebody who is in Los Angeles.
Got it.
And it also coincided with the fact that I did have that part of myself that wanted that path, that I don't want to say path only because I use those metaphors, the path and the ladder. I wanted that structure of a ladder to follow. I wanted to know I could get a promotion and then another promotion and then another promotion. And in the same vein, my internal story about what it took to raise money in theater, all the money stories I had going on, they were like blaringly loud. So my belief in my own ability to go do it myself wasn't what it really needed to be. And I was kind of at the top of my game working for the people I was working for. I was their right hand. And there was a bit of a sense of where do I go from here if I'm not going to go out on my own? And so between the boy and that clear ladder in Hollywood, it felt like a great next step. I will say the boy is my husband.
So
it actually worked. It was a good choice.
That's a whole separate segment of, what women should do. Should we follow the boy or not? But sometimes you can't help it and it works out with the best outcome, right?
It does. I will tell you something about that boy. It was not easy. I mean, it was going from long distance to, it was not easy. And there is a quote to speak to what you just said that I had on a Post-it on my computer that I have given to both of my children. They're both girls. They're 15 and 17. And I repeat it to clients all the time. And I think this is true in career. I think it's true in personal. It became truly my guiding force as my husband and I were working through whether or not this was really going to be a relationship that was going to last. We were married 19 years in May.
Wow, congratulations.
But thank you. I'm going to date myself right now, but it was during the time of Sex and the City, which I was a huge fan of.
Yeah.
And actually, my story kind of like she moved and left New York when I moved and left New York. It was,
but she went to Paris. You went to Hollywood, California.
I know, you're right. It's so true. And Paris would have been so much better.
But she didn't follow the right boy, so that didn't work out for her.
That's true also. The quote is, the most important relationship of your life will be the one you have with yourself. Yeah. And if you can find the you, and if you can find someone to love the you that you love, well, that's just fabulous.
Yep. No, agreed.
And I just got the chills. I still feel that way. And it really was I knew as I was going to see if this would work, but I had to stay for me.
Yep. Yep.
So.
And I think that statement that you just said, the biggest relationship is the one you have with yourself. It goes broader to everything that you did and all the decisions that we make. So when you were 3, you loved being on stage. That was the goal, right? That's what you knew. That's what you felt. That's what made you the best version of yourself. That pivoted, right? When you were in New York, you had a different opportunity. And it's almost as if you're going through this journey and you're approached with different experiences, and you gain knowledge, and you change as you evolve. And I don't want to say getting older, because it's not just getting older, but it's about exposing yourself to different experiences and opportunities. And with that, we are allowed to pivot. We are allowed to shift. We are allowed to redefine who we are and who makes us the happiest. And by the way, prioritizing to make sure we have the best relationship with ourselves. So I would say, even outside of the boy context, all the decisions that you made in your journey represent that. At that time, you had a checkpoint to say, this is who I am now. This is what I want to be. If it's the boy, if it's the job, if it's the pregnancy, it evolves you and it makes you a different person if we like it or not. And we have to be okay with you're not going to be the same version of yourself your entire life. That will change over time.
Yeah. Yes, we are always, Michelle Obama said it best. We are always becoming. We really are. We are always, always evolving. And I think women in particular do not give themselves permission to explore who they are in this moment and what do they want in this moment.
I agree. And let's go there a minute. So I feel that all the time. And I feel even colleagues or friends around me, it's almost as if once you've chosen this one path, or to your analogy, this ladder, this linear direction, we feel that we can't veer or stray from that path. And I don't know why that is. I'd love to get your opinion of why don't we allow ourselves to evolve? Why don't we allow ourselves that we should be becoming all the time? We should be wanting to be a different version. Why do we feel like we have to stay in the character that we built when we were, 23, 24, 25?
I think there's a few different reasons. I think one of them goes back to what I was saying about that feeling of, if I stop doing this thing that I said I was going to do, I feel a little bit like a failure. Yeah. And what are other people going to think? Yep. About this choice I'm making? So there's that element. There's also the sunk cost fallacy, right? I've spent all this time, all this money, all these years on schooling. I've killed myself to get to where I am right now. And just because I don't love it anymore, I'm going to leave? Well, what if the answer was just yes? Or at least the really interesting thing is, what I find with a lot of people that I work with is they don't leave. It's what we discover when we work together is as we climb ladders, we tend to find ourselves leaving pieces of ourselves behind. And I don't think we even notice it. It feels like little compromises along the way because we think that's what's needed to get where we're going. It's what we see the people before us do. And so we abandon parts of ourselves that we realize are actually very important. Yeah. And often when there is that feeling of, is this all there is? Or my life looks great on paper, why don't I feel that way? It's because of those pieces of ourselves we've abandoned. And a lot of the people that I work with discover that they can bring those pieces back in and they don't have to leave. And the job feels totally different when they're operating with those parts of themselves that are so important. There are people who they realize my values are not aligned with this company, or this job isn't fulfilling me in the way it once did. But there is that feeling of, if I even let myself explore what else is out there or why I feel this way, I'm going to have to blow up my life. Yep. And I think what happens often is actually the opposite, because when women don't let themselves explore, they get to a place where they're burnt out or they just can't take it anymore, and then they throw it all away. But if they actually gave themselves permission to start to look, when they start to have those feelings, then most of the time they would probably find that there's actually a lot of things, small changes that can be made that will allow them to continue in exactly the direction they were going, but it will feel totally different.
So how do we do that? How do we change the mindset of women to allow themselves to feel and become throughout their journeys? Because I agree with you. Women get to the point where, and it usually happens between 40 and 50 or for, over 50, and they just get fed up. They're at their limit. They've compromised themselves. They've given pieces of themselves away along the way. And then they have a checkpoint and they're like, oh crap, like, who am I? I am not the version that I expected to be at whatever number, right? Whenever you have this self-awareness, and then they become resentful and they just say, well, let's just throw it all away and start over. Like, hands up, I surrender. We're going to do this a totally different way. So what do you coach the people that work with you, or what are some tactics to shift that mindset for women to allow themselves not have to compromise along the way? And how do they have a checkpoint to understand and ask themselves questions of what they want, and to make sure that they're molding their journey to respond to what they want versus the opposite?
That is a huge question.
That's your job, so you should know the answer.
You're right, but it's a big, you just brought in so many different elements. So the mindset element is, I think before the mindset comes the willingness to go, maybe there's something I don't know here. And I guess that's a mindset thing. I think there is a societal message that all people get, not just women, but I think it's even stronger for women. And I think the biggest societal message for women is, what I want isn't as important because it's my job to take care of everybody else. And so the thing that I would want women to know is understand where that messaging that we get comes from, because it goes way back. And the perfectionism and people pleasing that women have, it actually stems from when the patriarchal culture started to set in. And to be clear, patriarchy is not about I hate men, because men, there are consequences for men from patriarchal thinking as well. But in the late 1800s and early 1900s, when women literally could not own a home or land or have a job, they could not take care of themselves without a man.
Right.
Whether it was their husband or their father or their brother, their survival depended on a man housing them and feeding them. Yeah. And so in order to make sure that we could survive, we had to make sure those men were happy. We had to please them, and that meant keeping everything perfect in the home.
Yep.
And so that survival strategy is because remember, 1975 is when a woman could first have a mortgage or a credit card. And it wasn't until the 80s that a woman could actually get her own business loan. It has been a really long time that women needed men to survive.
Yeah. And let's go back a little bit, not to interrupt you, but go back a little bit. The reason why women were so dependent on men is because of the pure nature of nature versus nurture. Like, we had a hunter and we had a gatherer, someone to survive back in the day, because of the physical nature and the physical effort that it took. The man had to go kill food and the women had to gather and do what she was capable of physically. Different, both needed. And so because of that internal at the home versus physically going to hunt, that naturally evolved to what you said. Now we become dependent on the man.
Yes.
They're able to go out. They're able to work. We have to stay at home. So it goes back to the fundamental need to survive.
There's a really interesting book by a woman named Elise Lunan called On Our Best Behavior. And the prologue is the entire history of what we're talking about, because there was a time even before that where women were actually going out and hunting as well.
Wow.
And I can't remember all the details, so that's why I'm going to just tell you the book to read. But it's fascinating because there was a time and there was a reason behind the shift in the thinking around the men are in charge and the women are at home.
Okay.
Right?
I'm reading it.
You should. And the book in general is just a fabulous read. It's really fascinating. It's about the 7 deadly sins and how they were created to keep women smaller.
Oh my goodness.
So good. It's really, really an excellent
I'm on
book.
it.
So yes, but yes, there's this, and we're still fighting it, right?
Yeah.
We're still fighting these ideas. And part of why I do what I do is because we need to start to shift the DNA so that our children and our children's children are starting to see it differently, starting to feel it differently, right? It's a somatic response in our bodies when it feels like somebody's angry with us or when we're not doing it perfectly. And so there's that element for women to get back full circle of you actually can take care of yourself. Mm-hmm. You actually are allowed to ask yourself what you want. Does it mean that, and it doesn't mean you don't take care of your family if that's important to you.
Right.
There's ways to bring both things in. But we feel so stuck in our brains of, I can't see how this could possibly happen, that we do not even let ourselves ask the question. So I guess I would say to you, where do you start? Take yourself on a date for a glass of wine, for a cup of coffee, and sit down with a journal and start to just say, I'm going to put all the voices that tell me I can't, they stay outside of this for the hour that I'm here. And they'll try and pop in and you say, oh, no, outside. And just write, what do you dream of? What is the life that you want to have? If you got to make it all up, does that mean that every single element of it is possible? It doesn't, but you know what? It's definitely not if you don't even ask yourself that question. So that's where I would start, is give yourself permission to take an hour and ask that question and see what comes up.
Give your permission to take time for yourself, as women prioritize everyone else in their life except for themselves most of the time, for majority. So and don't feel guilty about it when you do it. When you take an hour a day or an hour a week, it's okay. And you need to do that. And you don't have to feel guilty. It's always fascinating to me that, women kill themselves to be there for their kids and for their husband and for their parents. And they're fulfilling all these other roles that they have this commitment to, or the sense of obligation. But to take an hour for yourself in a day is this sense of guilt that they feel like, and it's almost like when you hear women talk sometimes, it's almost like they give themselves their own honorary medals when they've killed themselves for all the kids and they have no time for themselves. They're like, oh my gosh, I can't even fathom going to the store or going to work out because I've done, all these things for my kids. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about is that gets old really quick, and you won't have a sense of fulfillment and happiness. And you'll get to the point where the gas tank is empty and there's nothing else to provide you fuel if you're going to take that kind of mindset. So in terms of executive coaching and leadership, are there parallels that you draw when you're talking to, women leaders that can be correlated even to the basics of how women, if they choose to work or not, or they're working at the home or for whatever they're doing, that there's parallels that you could communicate to the audience listening of just different tactics that they could make time for themselves, questions they should ask?
So the way that I work as a coach is I work inside out. And generally, if a woman is putting everybody else's needs first at home, they're probably doing it at work as well.
Yep. Fair.
The way people operate in their lives is the way people tend to operate in their lives. So
Fair.
While I'm working with women and we're usually starting to look at their work and what's not working there, or sometimes it's what's not working. Sometimes it's, I feel stuck and I want to get to the next level. What's in the way, right? Either way, where we need to start is internally, and what do you want? And where are you now? And what's the gap? What's in the way between where you are now and what you want, where you want to get? So that's the first question. The other thing that's really important for women, for all leaders, but women leaders have a harder time doing this, is blocking space on your calendar that nobody gets to take. for your big picture thinking. If you are in a leadership position, you need clear space for big picture thinking. You cannot get sucked down into all the little particles of the day-to-day tasks. If you're going to have a vision for your team or for your company, no matter what your job is, you need space for big picture thinking, for clearing out your brain, for going, what are the problems that I'm looking to solve? Slowing down long enough so that you're not operating from a place of reactivity or panic, and instead operating from a place of, I'm going to put it all out in front of me. I'm going to brainstorm. Do I need help here? That's another one that's really hard for women to ask for. But I mean, the strongest leaders I work with know when to ask for help. It only makes them better. There's another belief that women leaders tend to have of, I need to be an expert at everything that everyone on my team is an expert at, right?
Yep.
That's the antithesis of leadership. If you are a leader, you want to hire experts that are better than you. Yep. And you lead them all to collaborate to the same vision, right?
Yep.
So,
do you think men do the same thing? Do they hire?
That's a great question. I don't think men feel the need to know. I can't answer that. I have not worked with as many men as I have women. I think that there are different things that men feel. I do think men feel like they have to have all the answers. I think that's something that men in general feel a pressure to have. They need to make the money and they need to have all the answers. But I do think this depends on the person. And again, because I haven't worked with as many men, I don't want to make a vast generalization when I don't have the experience to back it up.
Yeah, so I'll jump in a little bit. Great. I've worked in a male-dominated industry my entire life. I agree with you. Men seem to always either think or have the demand to know that they have the right answer. That's almost an expectation they have. They do build teams, and it's interesting when they go to other companies, they usually take the team with them because they have this trust, they have this reliance. I don't know if the people are necessarily more knowledgeable of that leader, but they do a really good job having a person dedicated for every certain skill that they're looking for. So they diversify their team. They making sure they have a go-to for every skill set they need to make them knowledgeable and strong. And they trust those people. And I would say the delegation and the delegation and the ease of letting them be a team, men seem to do it a little bit easier because my theory is women, to your point, if we don't do it, we're failing. If we don't deliver, if we don't have all the answers, this level of perfection then correlates to failure. So if I'm a leader and my boss, who's a male, asks me for something that I need to deliver on, do I have the same leadership to ask someone on my team to help me build that and to help me get that answer? Or am I going to kill myself and do it myself? I will say I evolved probably around the age of 30 to understand that I was at a cap as a leader if I didn't invest in my team, if I didn't grow my team, if I didn't lean on my team, and I didn't delegate and teach my team. You become at a cap point. And I couldn't get stronger as a leader. So it is a self-realization that I had as a woman leader to say, for me to get better and to grow and to do more, I better have a really good team and I better trust them and I better delegate. But I don't know if that happens earlier for male or if it's just innate in them where they're automatically doing it. And as women, we have to learn to do that through the experiences we have as a leader.
There's a couple things that I thought of as you were talking. One is I think women naturally feel much more of a need to prove themselves. And so their ability to do all of these things, they feel shows value, right? So there's that element. I also think as women, I suffer from this in my home with my family. It's like there's that whole, if I need it done right, I'll do it myself.
Yeah. And now I'm not going to wait 5 minutes.
Right. That's exactly right. And I think that goes into I have seen this with women leaders where I've had to really work with them to, no, don't fix it. You have to take the time to talk with your team member to show them what's not working and how you want it done differently. That's how they grow. You talk about not having enough time. It's because you're doing your team's work. You're not doing the leadership work you're supposed to be doing. So I think that's a big one for women. And I don't think men do that. Men's natural inclination is somebody else needs to do it and make it better for me.
Figure it out. Yeah. No, and that's a great point. I mean, even like with kids, like we could give them the answer. We could do something for them, but that doesn't help your kid in the long run. That doesn't help your team member in the long run. That enables them. And it just means that they haven't solved that problem. So not only haven't learned how to solve the problem from a critical thinking perspective, but they haven't learned that skill or that solution. And so when that gets challenged down the road, they won't have the skill set to apply. So you're making, even though it's harder in the moment to release that control and that it's not a failure. You just think of it as you're growing someone else. Take the time, invest in the person, and they may fail, and that's okay because then you can teach them how to get back up. And it's a different way of thinking, but yeah, something that took me a while as a leader to learn. But once I got it, there's nothing greater than having a great team, trusting them, delegating, teaching, mentoring, and growing them, because then you see them to evolve. And when you have the right team, that synergistic effect that you have across the board, when you invest the right way, there's nothing more powerful than that, in my opinion.
I agree with you. And one of the things I love doing is working with teams that are struggling to communicate effectively, to collaborate effectively for whatever reason. The thing I find is there is a real fear of conflict. And learning, and men are not as afraid of conflict in general as women are. And that's the people pleasing element. So teaching teams how to actually engage in healthy conflict and how imperative it is for building trust and for actually becoming a more collaborative and team. And I mean, I think conflict is imperative to growth.
Yeah. Agreed.
Right? So and when a leader can bring that in, when a leader is willing to have those hard conversations or bring two of their team members together there to facilitate those challenging conversations, I mean, it creates magic. It really does.
It does. And so let's go back a little bit. You talked early on that you had this self-talk in your brain, and women have that all the time. You have this inner voice that's, you have a bazillion conversations going on. You're convincing yourself of one thing or another, or talking yourself out of something. So, talking to the audience, maybe a younger generation of women that are trying to figure out at a very early stage, like you were, right? You wanted to be in theater, you wanted to be on the stage, and now you're an executive leadership coach, right? So at that age of your 20s, or you're in college, how do you and when do you listen to this inner voice? When do you listen to the self-talk that goes on? And how do you navigate and figure out like what to listen to and how to take the next step?
So, I mean, as you mentioned, there's a lot of different ways that those voices show up. We have more than one usually. And I think the most important thing is learning the difference between a voice that is simply trying to keep you safe and a voice that is actually discerning. And so a discerning voice is going to get curious. A discerning voice, when you say, I know I went to school for political science, but I really think I want to be a writer. A discerning voice is going to say something like, interesting. What's important to you about becoming a writer? What do you think you need to do to actually explore that? It's going to let you explore the path, right? The critical voice, or what my generation was raised to think of as the realistic voice, but really it is going to go to, you just went to school for political science. That would be such a waste of money. Or why do you think anyone would ever hire you as a writer? Or all the what ifs, shoulds, whys, the black and white thinking, the you'll never be able to, the what will other people think. That is the voice that I'm not saying there might be a conversation to look at there, but that voice stops us before we even allow ourselves to explore. It comes in so fast and it just squashes it. So where are you going to find the money for graduate school? Forget it.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, yeah, that's true.
Yep.
Where am I going to find the money? That's too expensive. I can't do it. Instead of, well, what are the different ways that I could get to graduate school? Let me do some research and find out. And when you do the research, a couple things happen. You find out what actually is and isn't possible, because it's not true. I don't believe that anything is possible for every person. We all have circumstances in our lives.
Right.
We all have things that are important. And, we need to take those into consideration. I'm not one to say,
Agreed.
Go put $100,000 on a credit card, right? No. There are coaches who will say, make it possible. I don't think you should go into $100,000 of debt to make it possible. Unless you think, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I just think that is a conversation that comes up, and I want to say that. But you have to give yourself the space to actually look and see, how is it possible? Are there grants I could get? Are there loans I could get? What kind of job could I get that would allow me to go to school and work at the same time? I'm just spitballing ideas here, but where you start to actually go, well, is there a way that I could make this possible rather than, I don't see how that could possibly work? Those two different things. And so noticing when it's a voice that automatically shuts down the excitement, shuts down the idea, just go, it's as simple as labeling it. Oh, that's my inner critic.
Mm-hmm.
What are the other, what else is possible? So that you start to have awareness around that voice and you stop thinking it's you. It's the entirety of you.
Love it. What great advice. And maybe to wrap up, one of the final questions is, you've made a lot of pivots in your personal and professional journey, right? Taking different types of jobs, different industries to land up to what you're doing now, executive leadership coaching. So if someone needs that confidence to make that pivot, or the confidence that a woman leader needs in her current role, or confidence that a graduate in college needs to make a shift in what he or she went to school for, what are some things that someone can ask themselves or do that helps them give them their own confidence?
So I believe that the confidence actually comes from the courage to take the risk. So I wasn't confident in any of those shifts. I was terrified. And there was something different I wanted for myself that was more important than my fear. And so it's getting really honest with yourself about it goes back to, what do you really want for yourself in your life? And having the courage to say and then when the voice of fear comes up, here is a really practical tool that people can use. They can say, okay, so what's the worst thing that can they'll automatically go to, what if I fail? Okay, so what if you fail? Actually go down that path of thinking.
Yeah, feel it.
What if I fail? Okay, well, this might happen. Okay, and then what? And then what?
Yeah.
And where inevitably every single one of my clients winds up is, oh, I would be okay.
Yeah.
It might suck, but I'd be okay.
Yeah.
So the fact is, you can't take on a new position and be 100% confident because you've never done that stuff before. You have to take risks. And you have to be courageous, and the confidence comes from trying new things, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, iterating on that, and getting better and better and better. We all forget what it's like to be a beginner. But when you want to gain new skills or you want to try something new, you've got to let yourself be a little bit of a beginner.
I love that advice. Courage is, you have to take the risks, and it's okay to feel uncomfortable. It's okay not knowing. It's okay that you might fail for all the things that we talked about today. It all builds upon those same themes. So, Michelle, it was a lovely conversation, all the way from hearing your on the stage stories to what you're doing now with women and executive leadership. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Christine.
So once again, this is Root to Rising, a podcast created for women to share their stories and experiences for others to listen, learn, and grow. Until next time.